Alright, hey everyone. Today I'm going to talk about two different types of universities, public universities versus private universities. And the website I'm using is bigfuture.collegeboard.org. Feel free to click on the link in the description below and you'll be able to access it. But the stereotypical public university, at least for my accounts, as a bear. Oh, I have to show you my bear. Look at my bear. I'm a UC Berkeley bear. I just graduated in May 2016, so I'm going to use UC Berkeley as my stereotypic public university. The private university I'm going to use is Stanford University because Stanford is arch nemesis with Berkeley. I don't really care that much about Stanford. Just kidding. Stanford's a great school. But you got to carry out the rivalry. So Stanford is the private university I'm going to use. And so if you don't actually know whether your school is public or private, you can search them up on this website. And right away, the first thing you'll see is that the type you'll see the type category and it'll say public or private. And as you can see, Berkeley is public, Stanford's private. There are two main differences I'm going to talk about today. The first difference between public and private universities is the class sizes. Berkeley has almost 28,000 undergrads, Stanford has 7,000. That means for every 4 UC Berkeley graduates, there's 1 Stanford graduate in terms of undergrads. That can be a bit scary. When are you going to see that reflected? You'll see that reflected in your clubs. Every club is around 100 to 200 people at UC Berkeley, whereas the club at Stanford is not necessarily going to be that big. Every club also has a lot more people, so if you're like me, I was super shy, and it took me a lot of time to actually come out of my shell in those types of organizations. The second place where you'll see that change in class size reflected is your actual classes. On my first day of undergrad of 500 students. Yes, 500. If you don't already know, my high school had a graduating class of 500 students, and now I walk into UC Berkeley and the first class I had was 500 students. Stanford does not necessarily have that. Actually, I don't think they have any 500 students classes. The largest class size they might have is 100, 150, but most of their classes will be around 50, 60, maybe even 30 students. They're lucky. Um, but with that being said, the other thing I wanted to point out is even though you have this large class size, that does not necessarily mean it's bad. All right, a lot of students think big classes are bad. That's not always the case. Personally, I came to really enjoy large classes because I didn't necessarily have to go to lecture. Um, and that's really nice because with these large classes, they record all of the lectures because they realize there are a lot of students there. So those recorded lectures are available to you as a student. You can go back to the lectures that you find difficult, kind of go to the places that you kind of struggled, and I would rewind and rewatch and maybe even watch them on 2 times speed, and that would really help me. Um, but yeah, these large class sizes are definitely a problem at UC Berkeley, and they are not a problem at Stanford for sure. So if you're craving that individual attention, you will get that at Stanford. You can also get that attention at Berkeley. Let's say you're a person who has a lot of class. I definitely did. The problem is you don't want to ask questions in a 500 student classroom because you're going to crap in your pants. The thing I did is I'd talk to professors after class. I'd go to their office hours, and the last thing I'd do is actually reach out to TAs. And if you reach out and you take the initiative, everyone at a public institution will help you because they're committed to your learning. Any professor, any TA is committed to your learning. But if you reach out to them, they'll help you. At Stanford, those TAs and professors are more likely to reach out to you because the class sizes are smaller. At Berkeley, you have to take that initiative on your own because if you don't do it, they don't even know you exist. There are 28,000 students on campus. One person is not going to make a difference for a TA. So if you don't reach out to the TA, they won't help you. And these big classes are actually getting to be a huge deal at Berkeley now. Berkeley recently just started its first class with 1,000 students. The introductory CS class at Berkeley has 1,000 enrolled students in it. And that means you're going to class with 999 other students. That's how crazy it is. But again, not necessarily bad. If you take initiative, you will get the help. But that's something that at a private institution you don't necessarily have to worry about as much. So you might be asking, why the hell would I go to a private institution? Why the hell would I go to a public institution then when I can go to a private institution and get much more attention? Well, that brings me to my second point, which is the second difference I want to point out, which is the tuition. The in-state tuition at Berkeley it's actually 4 times less, almost. It's actually a bit more than 4 times less than the tuition at Stanford. And the reason for that is UC Berkeley is a state school, University of California. So if you're in-state and you apply to UC Berkeley like I did, the tuition is significantly cheaper. With that being said, if you're out of state and you apply to UC Berkeley, you're kind of out of luck. But, let's say you're from Texas. Texas has its whole University of Texas school, and they have a similar thing where the in-state tuition is less. So check that. If it's a public institution and it's in-state, the tuition for you will be significantly cheaper. But look, even the out-of-state tuition at Berkeley is cheaper than the out-of-state tuition at Stanford. And the reason because private institutions are private for a reason. They're not regulated by the government, and therefore they can charge the same tuition for in-state. Tuition is significantly higher. When do you want to take this into consideration? Well, you always want to look long-term. 4 years will mean that 4 years, after 4 years, for me, I'd leave UC Berkeley with around $43,000 of debt, in-state tuition-wise. If I was at Stanford, that would have amounted to around $190,000, almost $200,000, significantly more. If you're under any sort of financial constraints, that's a big actually. Especially if you're like, you want to go into medicine, that's around 7 more years of school you have left. If you want to go into engineering, you have to pay off 200,000 versus 42,000. With that being said, I'm not saying that Stanford charges this to every student. If you have financial need, they are more than willing to give you a nice financial aid package because they have a lot of money. But you have to make that evident to them. If you don't already state it in your application, make sure you email them. Make sure you email your private institution and say you need some financial aid because it will impact you. And trust me, they are more than willing to give it to you if you take the initiative. At Berkeley, that sort of financial aid is very hard to come by. Why? Again, they have 28,000 students. They don't really care about one student. And unfortunately, you know, um, they can't do that for all 28,000. So the financial aid packages at Berkeley, not necessarily as nice, but if you demonstrate financial aid, they will definitely give you something. And I have had a lot of friends who have gotten substantial scholarships at UC Berkeley. It's just harder to come by. Whereas if you're Stanford, any sort of financial need can definitely get you a nice financial aid package. So, with that being said, I hope I discussed some of the biggest differences between in-state and out-of-state schools. I know when I was applying, well, not in-state and out-of-state, I mean public versus private, but we also talked about in-state and out-of-state. That's why I got confused. Regardless, I know when I was applying, I got those two confused. Hopefully, this helps you out. And definitely check out this website. I didn't even go over the test scores between the two schools, so if you want you want to compare your test scores, go for it. But hopefully, this helped you. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I look forward to making more videos and hopefully providing more insight. Thanks.